Okay, so we got a 2000 GMC Safari here. So what happened was, after we did a tune-up on it, we got rid of the misfires. It was running much better, much stronger. However, when you would take off from a dead stop and floor it wide open throttle, it would just fall flat on its face. So at that point, we took it back to our dealership, to our shop, and we decided to do some fuel pressure checks, right? And to do some fuel injector balance tests. So we came up on a fuel pressure test. Wide open throttle is about 62 psi, which is good. It's a good spec for the central port injection system, right? And I heard a lot of different specs as far as what the idle psi should be, but I heard one spec that made more sense to me, and that was 55 to 65 psi. So we had about 58 psi on the car idling. We had about 62 psi wide open throttle. So it seemed to fit the specs. So we knew we didn't have to go toward the fuel pump. And when we did the fuel injector balance test, it would drop down every time from 58 to about 50 on every single one of them, 6 cylinders. So every one was the same, and it would drop no less. And so we knew that pretty much the injectors weren't leaking, right? When we shut the key off, it would have a little bit of leak down. It'd probably lose like 7 pounds of pressure over 20 minutes, which wasn't terribly bad, you know. So we weren't thinking regulator. And also, if it was a bad fuel pressure regulator, it would have been running rich. It would have been throwing most likely rich codes, but it wasn't throwing any of those. So we got back on the scan tool. We're looking at it as we rev up the engine to 225, 3,000 RPMs. We see that the fuel trim numbers are going really positive. And we're like, okay, this is kind of weird. Sometimes at idle, it would be negative and right around 0, but then you would just rev it up to about 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. Then it would just go really positive to about, in some cases, 18, 19 positive, right? And sometimes around 13, 14. So at that point, I was thinking, okay, we got a bad mass airflow sensor here. Because a few days before that, or a couple days before that, I took the mass airflow out, I cleaned the resistors in it, put it back in, and it immediately ran better. But then after a couple days, it just went right back to where it was. So we decided, okay, let's replace the mass airflow sensor after I did the fuel trim checks. And it was going really positive when I was revving the RPMs up. So we changed the mass airflow sensor out, and it made the biggest difference in the world. It runs great now. It's strong. It doesn't fall flat on its face when you floor it, wide open throttle, taking off from a dead stop. It doesn't die at all. So that is the fix. We came to that conclusion mostly by looking at the scan tool. But also we ruled out the fuel pressure regulator. We ruled out the fuel pump. So we ruled out basically fuel, but mass airflow sensor does have something to do with fuel, because it's going to control the air-fuel ratio, because based on the reading that sends to the computer, the computer is going to use that information and determine, you know, how much fuel to feed to the cylinders. Well, we think that the mass airflow sensor was somehow shorted out. It was just setting erroneous readings, and it was running really bad on wide open throttle. So it's running like a champ now, and that was the fix. So there you go.
Awesome.